Motherfuckers saying they may hold say, okay, so make another hole.
Yeah, it's your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kickin It Session. Today, finally, my man, Rethinking the Dollar, Mike, over there, RTD. He's actually in my city, so we got a 313 D-Town connection going on today. What's going on, Mike, man? How are you today?
I am doing excellent, CB, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to connect with you today. And so definitely looking forward to hanging out with you and sharing my thoughts and perspectives and whatnot. And it's always great to connect with a fellow Detroiter. So I appreciate you taking time to sit down with me, man. I thank you for that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And honestly, you know, I appreciate you coming out to the Max Kaiser event that I hosted about a month and a half ago. It was a pleasant surprise to see you out there. And, you know, really, I wanted to, and we talked about it before we started, just about kind of getting more people. And you've already been doing that, man. I know when you started your channel, you're really getting out on the streets, interviewing people, asking people, educating people. And we were talking about kind of connecting and doing something like that together. Both you're more precious metals, I'm more crypto. Both are needed. You know, I don't think we should be fighting each other. It's a path maybe out of this traditional system that we're in, and I think it can help all of us. But first, tell the audience, if they don't know who you are, kind of give them your background. I think you mentioned that you were a professional athlete at some point. What led you to this whole Rethinking the Dollar movement?
All right, great question. So I appreciate the opportunity to share this. So, for me, as you mentioned, I came from a sports background, grew up in the inner city Detroit, borderline east-west side area. And so it was because of sports that I was able to actually leave outside the city and play at the collegiate level and then go play overseas for a couple years. And it wasn't until I actually got out of the city of Detroit and start being exposed to just different societies, different cultures, different nations that I began asking questions. And the first question was, our monetary system. When you go to different countries, you get paid in different currencies. You're kind of forced to try to assess the value and the exchange ratios and exchange rates and whatnot. And so I played basketball in Iceland.
Okay.
And so in Iceland, the Iceland Corona is a small island and it's extremely expensive. And so I had a very interesting experience of not wanting to spend there because the cost of living was extremely high there. And then within a few months later, I had a chance to go down to the bottom of the planet down in Argentina, right after 2 or 4 years removed from their little financial crisis they had there. And so when I got down there in Argentina, everything was extremely cheap. And so just that example within a year of being exposed to extreme price inflation due to it being at the top in a smaller region, and then going to the bottom after a financial crisis occurred, everything being relatively cheap. I was beyond excited and I'm more than happy to spend more down there because the dollar went further. And so went to a couple other countries and just saw the differences and how the purchasing power of a dollar went a little bit further in some countries than it did in others. And from that point on, I just began rethinking currencies and then learning about monetary history, things I never learned about in college. I like to mention that I would imagine unless you actually specialize in finance and even economics, you're capable of going from kindergarten all the way to a college degree, which I equated for myself about 19,000 hours, and learn nothing about financial literacy. Nevertheless, what a dollar is and how it's used and what it's what the history behind it. And so it was a 2013-ish. This is about 7 or 8 years after my first visit to Argentina. I went back to Argentina, and because I still have friends and whatnot down there, and went down there to do some community service work. And the exchange ratio of the dollar at that time when I went, I think it was 8-1 or a little bit above 8-1. So when I first went down there in 2003 or 4 or so, it was like 3-1. And now for it to be 8-1. And then when I came back to Detroit, within that same year or the year following, it went up to 15-1. And so as of now today, I think it's last time I checked, it's like 59-1. So I've witnessed firsthand the implosion of a monetary system, and it's nothing new down there. So they're used to it. So I have all kinds of stories I can share about activity down there, but began asking questions and then really became somewhat of a skeptic of everything I was taught, to where I figured I had to go learn for myself. And so that led me to Rethinking the Dollar. And ever since then, I've been trying to interview people and just get a better understanding of how the financial game works.
You've had some heavy hitters on your channel, man. Like That's amazing. You're doing a lot. And I was in Chicago over the weekend at Bitcoin Zay meetup, Bitcoin in Black America. And he has a excellent angle that he's going at, right? Because blacks, as a black person, economic or monetary knowledge is even worse than just America in general. Like our knowledge of money, how it works, and all that. So I'm always looking to support that type of movement. But there was a guy out there that was at the event. He was a skeptic of Bitcoin. He was a programmer, so he was kind of not, I want to say attacking it, but posing questions from more of a technical standpoint, which was good. I'm always into hearing other people's opinion and hearing the other side, because that helps you grow. If I can answer questions and rebuttal questions, that helps me grow, and possibly I can learn something from that person. You know what I'm saying? That's always a possibility there. And when I came back, I saw your video on Bitcoin, and could it be a booby trap? And at first I'm like, oh man, Mike's he's hitting us with the clickbait. But then I actually sat down and listened to it, man. Very good. And I want all of you to, and I'll leave a link to it, watch this video, because I have a primarily crypto focused audience. The video, could Bitcoin be a booby trap, was excellent, because he posed some really good questions. And one of the questions you posed was it a coincidence that Bitcoin came out right at the, I want to call it the height of the economic collapse in 2008, 2009? Why do you pose that question, and how do you see that being something that possibly would not work in our favor, or will it work in our favor? Kind of let us know.
Okay, man. Yeah, and so one of the things that concerned me, and this is all as of the last year or so, and so I'm not a cryptocurrency critic because I'm aware of the technology. I've been involved as far as educating myself and even speculating with a couple coins myself over the years. So it's not like it's something I'm new to.
Right.
But one thing I've noticed is the increasing trend in the push for adoption right before we have the greatest monetary shift in human history. And the reason I say that is because we are probably at, and so I mentioned that this next decade, I believe 2020 to 2030 will be the time frame where the great American empire will be no longer world dominating power that it has been, because all hands are exposed now from all the central banks around this planet that it's all a farce and it's not something that was meant to carry on forever. And then the question I have is, with cryptocurrency technology, the blockchain is nothing new in and of itself, but it's been repositioned to us now in a way that the public now is grabbing a hold of it and actually getting excited about having a back door out of this system. But it just seems kind of sketchy as to how it happens at the same time that we have the great financial crisis. And then it appears to be that it's been positioned strategically 10, 11, 12, 13 years right before the system probably comes to a halt or a reset or a reboot or whatever we might look back and call it in history. But I question Satoshi Nakamoto and the very fact that it's a great phenomenon that a person or entity or whatever it might be, no one really seems to really care at heart. They're only more so concerned with now is that, okay, I'm in it before it takes off to the moon. So I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean? You're going to be good because this is a booby trap. If this is a setup, and I believe it could play into something like that.
Okay, so explain how you think it could be a setup. Like, what scenario would it be where we were basically bamboozled into this technology? Kind of give us a scenario, because I mean, I think I have a few that I could see playing out. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, great question. So first, and the primary one is that it's digital in nature. And so knowing monetary history, we know, if you know monetary history, then you know the the pathway we've taken to arrive at this current point where
they love this.
The dollar is all digital. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. It's 1.729. I looked at the numbers last night of paper in existence, and that's a scarce substance in of itself, and it's going to be a problem pretty soon. But the solution is being given as to further us into a digital age.
Yeah.
At the same time that it looks like the global governments are all looking to increase surveillance as well as the dictatorship type of policies that remove our privacy. And so just this very gadget right here, like this thing is labeled a smartphone for a reason. And just a quick story, and perhaps you probably can chime in on it. But me growing up in Detroit, I was associated with, some guys in the neighborhood that was just guys I grew up with.
Right.
And a lot of them, unfortunately, they were into the street pharmaceutical industry. And so they got in trouble a lot. And so I try to put it in a nice way.
There you go. I hear you.
And so I'll cut it short. But these gentlemen, we were all growing up young and dumb. Some would go to jail, some would go to juvenile and get out, and they would come home with tethers on their ankle. And so I was exposed to that. I have some family members as well that had ankles with those little gadgets on them. And so I'm thinking about that looking back now. It was no coincidence that the African-American community was is submerged in drugs,
right?
For the removal of our freedom and privacy to create a whole industry in of itself. So here we are 20, 30, 40 years later now, those same technology of surveillance, of where knowing your every move via GPS is now readily available right here. So
that's it.
They know everywhere and everything we do.
Can't even take your battery out your phone anymore.
Can't take your battery out your phone. And that's not by coincidence. And then to make it even worse, and I'll cut it short here, the GPS feature is always on, and then they're putting programs in there that you can talk to, and then they listen to every single thing we do. And this is just from this gadget to what we're talking on now.
Yep.
So if Bitcoin is really going to be, or the blockchain itself is going to be that savior or that exit out, how will you utilize it in an effective manner that you still have a little bit of privacy? Because everything has been watched, everything has been tracked. That's the name of the game. So those are all things that I kind of played into, like, man,
gotcha. Those are good. You're posing great questions. And, I joined the whole crypto thing in early 2013, late 12. And I've seen the transformation from where we are or where we were to where we are today with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoins. And it is concerning. I had my man, Rice Crypto on, and he's done a lot of research and really involved himself in the crypto community. And he's seen things as well. So I understand your concerns about Bitcoin, and was it a coincidence? Here's my thing. I think it was definitely planned strategically to come out right during the economic crisis, the what do we want to call it, the Great Recession that we just had. It definitely was not a coincidence. That was planned, man. I don't know for what reason, but it was definitely planned, possibly for a kind of a blow off valve type of scenario, where an escape route from traditional assets that we have, because they're all intertwined now. The bond markets are correlating with the equity markets, and the house, everything is intertwined because of this easy money system that the Federal Reserve has created on for us. So there is nowhere to go if this thing collapse. Right. Other than possibly precious metals, but I think you need to have physical delivery of those precious metals if you're going to have gold and silver. I don't know what your thoughts is on that, but I think that this Bitcoin thing is definitely strategically positioned right now for us. But I know you mentioned it being a trap for us in that sense as well. I don't know, man, because it is open source. Everybody can see the code. That's the thing about that. I always kind of do push back when people say Bitcoin is possibly a booby trap, but it's open source. I can see the code. I know there's no real nefarious code in there at all. It's solid. It's been running for quite some time, over a decade now. So I don't think that it's it's necessarily a trap in that nature, but it could become a trap. Like, just I put it to you this way: like Satoshi Nakamoto created this thing 10 years, 11 years ago, and he didn't know how it would evolve and what it would evolve into. Right? It could turn into a monster,
Right.
and I see that possibly happening. But the great thing is, it is open source, and it gives us the ability to fork and pivot and move in a different direction if we can get consensus. But my concern is, Mike, most of the people in this game today are still ignorant to the very mechanisms and weapons that they use in the traditional system.
Yeah.
So it's like, if they don't learn from that, then they're not going to see the signs to, say, no, this is not right in this new paradigm with cryptocurrencies. Right. So I know I was long-winded with that, but
so
go ahead.
Can I comment on that?
Because yeah.
Here's some things that is worth just throwing out there. And as I mentioned,
Sure.
I'm not a critic. I'm not a hater. I speculate in it, but I question it. And so I think that's what
as you should.
And so just think about this. We have Satoshi Nakamoto, an anonymous character, entity, or whatever, and the primary benefit of the blockchain, i.e. Bitcoin, being introduced at the time that it was introduced a decade ago, is because of the whole Byzantine general problem. And so the double spend issue. So here's some things worth thinking about. If Satoshi Nakamoto is a coder and the program, whoever that entity is so good at code, how long have they been sitting on that formula to come up with that code? And then is the Byzantine problem that was solved, how come that entity couldn't also build into it automatically privacy?
Okay, let's talk. I wanted to talk about that part. Good question. Good question.
One second. Because if it was intended to be a libertarian type or let's free the people movement, then why wouldn't you automatically roll something out that people can grab a hold of from the grassroots, even though government will reject it? And that's why I question, because government is not rejecting it. They're not condoning it. They're hush about it.
And that is the key. Okay, so that was one thing I wanted to talk about from your video, was that, me seeing how Bitcoin has changed over the years and how governments react to it, how Wall Street has, changed their tone or tune. I've seen that. I've seen those waves and changes, ebb and flows with this whole consciousness about Bitcoin in public opinion. What concerned me was Libra. And why Libra concerned me is because the governments went after Libra the way I thought they would go after Bitcoin, if that makes sense. So that made me rethink, because initially, before Libra was even thought of years and years ago, I always would sit and just think about, like, what will the governments do when Bitcoin becomes more popular? Because I knew it was going to. I'm like, how will they approach it? How will they decide to deal with it? Because it is a direct threat to what they're attempting to do. It's more sound money than anything we have. And so the thing that I stated at that point was, I think they're not attacking it because they know they can't stop it. So if you attack something and you fail, you look weaker than if you just kind of ignore it, maybe, and then let it play out and see how you can, you don't want to jump the gun with those types of new technologies. And that's what I thought initially. That's what I thought they were doing. But when I saw them come out, guns a-blazing against Libra, which Libra is a direct threat to them as well. But it made me think, like, they're not attacking Bitcoin, but they're attacking Libra. I think it's because they don't have anyone to attack with Bitcoin. It's a protocol, right? So when you're dealing with protocols, and this is more on a technical level, Mike, a protocol, Bitcoin being that protocol, will be considered kind of layer zero. Like, you build out the fundamental base attributes of that technology stack, right? And then from there, you allow people to build privacy on layer 1 or layer 2 or layer 3 or whatever. You get what I'm saying? So you don't want to lock it down so much and have so many features within a protocol that you restrict yourself in the future. Because if, let's say they did, Satoshi, whoever the group is, whatever, they built privacy into layer 0, like the, what we know as Bitcoin Core. Then 10 years later, let's say things change and privacy algorithms with quantum computers and stuff, it renders that layer null and void. So now the whole stack is messed up because you built it at layer 0, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So you kind of leave it open ended. You don't do a full build out feature set with any type of new protocol. You leave it open ended at layer 0, and then you let the community and everything kind of build and stack above it.
Yeah. Now that makes perfect sense. And so that's one of the things where that's perfectly a viable answer there. I definitely, agree with you on that point. And so just to touch on the Libra. And so
yeah.
Libra to me, it's smoke and mirrors. And so I don't find anything of coincidence at this point of the game, because it's the ninth inning. Like, things are really unfolding. So is it surprising that Libra or Facebook came out with the concept of making a currency in their own platform that the world has access to? I don't think so. And then just the very characteristics of it. It's labeled a cryptocurrency, but yet it's going to be a stable coin with, you have the top corporations that are a part of this, rigging the system, holding nodes to validate whatever they want to do.
You know how we call Bitcoin Gold 2.0?
Yeah.
Libra is like SDR 2.0.
Exactly. And they're using all the lingo of a free open source, code type of thing, in a sense. And so it's not by coincidence. And so Libra to me is an example of, if you go back to, the Federal Reserve Act, before the Federal Reserve Act came into play, it was an Aldrich bill. And so Senator Aldrich, recommended that they, of course, along with the bankers' help, he recommended that they initialize some type of documentation to lessen the power of the banks and give it more so to a single entity, bringing back the whole central bank concept. And so that very bill, I think it came out in 1910 or well before 1913. So it was 2, 3, 4 years of just floating an idea that sounded like it could be a good solution.
Yeah, and
so
kept getting rejected.
From the banks, we give it to the single entity, they can regulate. And then sure enough, 3 or 4 years later, what happened? They changed the wording of it. It became a Federal Reserve Act. And look at us now. So Libra could come out as, it's the global stable, whatever. The government could say, you know what, give us this authority 2 or 3 years after it's up and running. And here we are now. They have the infrastructure. They have everybody's phone has a Facebook app with access to this coin. It seems like a nice rollover in 2 or 3 years when the dollar's problematic to me. So
how do you? Yeah, that could be a possibility. But where I see some issue with that is that because the Libra is composed of 5 different currencies, it is a direct threat to the Federal Reserve monetary policy and system, because it now makes the demand for dollar 5 times less, or 1/5 of what it would be if we were to stay with the current fiat system that we run. So help me on, do you think the Federal Reserve is actually really with this, or do you think this is a direct threat to the Federal Reserve, and maybe there is a whole nother collusion and group of individuals and corporations that are just trying to overtake the Federal Reserve?
Yeah.
How do you look at that?
Great point. I think my initial gut feeling is that it's a collusion of central banks figuring out how to somehow, some way give the public a so-called viable option, freedom, by allowing the whole open source aspect to roam and pick up momentum, introducing the concept to the public, while on the other end, through corporations and the banking sector, they themselves put together a package deal amongst themselves, because ultimately, this is not to be conspiratorial, but I believe that at the end of all this, we're being set up for like a one world, one tier type of society, governmentally as well as monetary wise. And so now we're at the point where central banks as themselves are crumbling, but they're all interconnected, but they're crumbling. So the next option for them would be to join forces together and try to provide a single source, or narrow the choices down of options for international global trade, especially for the citizens. So I can see this easily being a Mark Carney, Jackson Hole recommendation that he's probably slipped a little earlier when he mentioned about getting rid of the petrodollar.
Yep.
And so I think he probably slipped the tongue a little sooner because the media ran with it.
Yeah, they did.
Now, I think it was 2 days ago, I saw an article about Mark Carney saying, let's work with them. Let's set up some regulation and restrictions around it to cooperate. So, yeah, the central banks, they want power, but yet they need
why not go the SDR route? IMF, SDR route. Yeah. That would have been my thought. Like, that's the most obvious route that they would go, you know?
It's not too late. I mean, they can easily, somehow, some way, and this is all just me speculating and just throwing out ideas, but you'll never know what's far-fetched and what's crazy until we get to that point. But with the SDR rights in general, it was a pre-planned rollover for this time. Perhaps the whole Byzantine aspect wasn't solved then. And so once they solved it, they said, hey, we got an open source blockchain that now people are getting a whiff of it. They're getting excited. We're going to let it run up to $20,000 on December 17th, 2017, get them geeked. And then by that time, we're going to have the banks issuing stable coins, and then they'll be excited. And then we're going to roll everyone's pensions and everything over into it. And then we'll link it into the basket that we'll put under the SDR control, and we'll even digitize SDR rights. And so, you know, that type of thing is all possible.
So you're saying you think the Facebook may end up morphing into like a compromise, like the government will say, okay, we'll compromise with you. We'll let you do Libra, but it has to be under the IMF guidance or control, partnership.
Yeah. Because Facebook is too big of a behemoth to not be monitored and watched over. And it's all software. So if Facebook is just a web browser and an app on our phones, it's in everybody's possession. You see Mark Zuckerberg trying to get internet to Africa and all the nations that are not on board yet. And so why
that's not really philanthropically doing so. He needs to do that because there's money to be made in those.
100%.
yeah, that's insane, man. So that's a good approach. I'm gonna be honest with you, I never thought about Libra, IMF kind of, you know, combining there. That's a good theory there. I think that may have some weight for sure. No. I want to come back really quickly to the Bitcoin topic though, in regards to privacy. Initially, when this coin came out, man, it was anonymous. Okay, it's becoming pseudo-anonymous now, or damn near no privacy because of how things have evolved in the last 10 years. Back then, there were no exchanges that ask you anything, you know, other than your email address.
Right. So that's going to pick up.
Yes.
That movement of needing to know who's involved in this industry will pick up. And then
we're now at the point that the government has closed off all of those ramps. Now you have KYC at every crypto exchange in America for sure, globally just about all of them as well. They're cracking down, man. AML, KYC. So when you add those checkpoints at the entry and exit points, now it's a bad situation with this technology because it's all traceable now on the blockchain.
So as you talk, I get more ideas. So I apologize. You hit on a good point about entry and exit. And so from the very entry standpoint, I've heard, and this is, let me know for sure. I'm sure you're aware, but I've heard of exchanges being able to mark or label or somehow stain a coin or something like that.
Taint a coin.
And so once that coin is in your possession, you KYC'd it out of some exchange and it's in your possession. So they know your IP address. They know some things about who or the purchaser of it. And then think about this. All the payment processing centers, they can only do open source coins. They can only accept open source coins. There are no payment processing centers at any merchants anywhere that allows privacy willingly. And so in order for the stores to accept it and be able to get back into fiat, they got to be KYC, AML, all that stuff as well. So the goal is to limit any type of interaction between the time you purchase and exit of there being any anonymity for
But
a
that's
single
the good.
person.
You're right, and they're attempting to hard, and them doing that. If a person is more technical, they understand that that's a rabbit hole. That's something they're chasing that they'll never catch, because I can mix my coins, tumble them. It's a lot you can do.
Yeah.
That in the old system, it was close.
Yeah.
You know, when in the old system, if I had 100,000 in cash, they couldn't trace that, right?
Yeah.
Now, but if they come to your house or they pull you over and they see that, they can take it.
Yeah.
The difference now is there's no visible bag of $100,000 for them to take this go around. So I think there still is some hope there for us in that regard to some privacy, because you still can, but people have to be educated. And this is what I mean, Mike. Like, people are so concerned, and you said this, they're so concerned about the price and getting their Lambo and going to the moon that they're not even focused on the true technology of Bitcoin, of many of these privacy coins that you can leverage to keep your freedom, to keep your privacy. And so I think it's just important that people start to understand all of that in this new paradigm.
Yeah. Here's something worth thinking about as well. Because everybody, not everybody, the newbies, it's more so the people who have been hollering for a while, people who got in at the ground level, they've already been able to position themselves entrepreneurial wise to where they can invest and do some things and live a comfortable life at this current point. But those that are getting in now, especially as institutions make it easier for pension funds and hedge funds and all those type of products and asset services to get involved, the people who are at this current moment, they'll reap some of the benefits. And so that's why I mentioned that, no doubt cryptocurrency in general, there'll probably be a lot of projects that offer valid use case scenarios that will go up. So that's no doubt. But then again, it's going to be when it's time to utilize those and get out. How easy will it be to go, say, purchase whatever it is you're waiting to purchase one day, whether it be the Lambo or a house or however you choose to get out? How easy will it be to then liquidate some of those cryptocurrencies?
Not going to be easy, because
you're not going to want paper. You're not going to want paper. You're not going to want more digital of the old system. So, so those are all things worth thinking about that I think, we should all become somewhat skeptical of the entry and exit point, and then a long-term aspect.
Yeah, the exit point, man, is a problem. So if you make $1 million or $2 million or whatever, man, once you hit that fiat, it's on. They're after you. IRS is they're knocking at your door.
Yeah.
So that is something that people need to really consider. There is no, and even if someone is doing a asset for Bitcoin transaction, at some point they're probably going to need to do something with that Bitcoin as well. So it's always that issue, and I don't see fiat currencies ever going away. I just see them reinventing it in new forms. Yeah. As long as the government is in control, they're going to have their money, man. That's their control. That literally is their control.
Definitely. A great example of that, what you're mentioning, is what's going on in China now with their coin that they're trying to roll out by November 11th, I believe.
Wow.
And so they're attempting to remove the paper notes, the paper renminbi notes, and just give them a digital currency solely, and more of a blockchain cryptocurrency style approach on top of the 40 trillion or whatever so digital yuan currency in the system there.
Yeah.
So ultimately the goal, in my opinion, in this next decade is to find out ways to remove paper, because it's going to be hard to keep track of paper because I think eventually, just like in Argentina, for example, in Venezuela as well, the black market. And so cash will circulate heavily on the black market, which thwarts taxation and everything else. At the same time, banks are looking to
negative interest rate.
Exactly. Keep money in the system. They need it in the system. They have you have no outlet.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're going toward that digital, route, and that's a banker's wet dream. They want you not to have any cash so that they can implement negative interest rates and you have nowhere to go. If you
Yeah.
can't withdraw money from the ATM because there is no physical note,
Mm-hmm.
you literally are trapped in the system, and they're taking your money every day.
And what are you going to be forced to use? You're going to be forced to use a digital gadget that I call a hand surveillance monitor.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to be forced to use. Now, I am confident and hopeful that there will be some movements pretty soon where we'll get some true encrypted type decentralized products and services. So I know there's people working on things like that, and whether or not it works or hits mainstream, we'll see. But I think if there is something out there that provides any smell of privacy, you might hear about it, might not hear about it, because the governments will jump on it immediately, saying that it's it's anti-this terrorism. We can't. So be on the lookout for items that are labeled as privacy based. And so if you hear the government talk about it, then perhaps it might have a little bit of validity behind it. But until we get some closed web browsers and operating systems and stuff like that, I'm not too hopeful.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. Again, I have to go back to the point of, the people that are in the crypto community needing to educate themselves on the various methods to keep your privacy. They're there, they're there. There are privacy coins. I personally like Mimblewimble, that consensus algorithm for privacy, very strong. So there are options for people. Tumblers, you can mix your coins. That helps. They will marginalize those individuals. So I think through this FATFA, I don't know if you know FATFA, that whole organization, they're actually going after crypto wallets, making them align with their whole policy. So essentially, I seriously, man, it was in the ledger terms of service updates. They're saying, like, if the government asks for your information, whatever we have on you, we have to give it to them.
So watch this. I'm sorry to cut you off, but in that same video about Booby Trap, I think I mentioned something about I think it was another video I mentioned about servers. And so just the fact that I'm not that technical, but I just assume in order to have a business operational over the internet and to have storage of information for thousands or millions of people, you got to have a source that goes back to a main hub of some kind, i.e. the servers. And so you mentioned this information here about Ledger having the right to issue your information if need be. So that lets me know that possibly somehow, some way, through your keys or some kind, they can see who you are, where you at.
Well, they're able to see it through your hardware wallet. That proprietary device that you buy from them. They're able to see when you sync up. They're able to see your IP.
Like Ledger?
Ledger, right?
Okay,
yeah.
So they can see. So they can see some activity on your end. Then
they can track your IP address.
More concern, more things to be not necessarily be worried about, just things to just be cautious.
But it's the same. But the thing is, Mike, is like they're going to use whatever tools are out there against us, right? So my thing is, I don't think Bitcoin was intended. I think it was intended to free us from the system, but it's being used and will continually and more perpetually be used to try to enslave us, just as every other aspect of this whole game. The internet was free and you could do whatever you wanted.
But look where we're at now with the internet, to where we hear about programs such as, I think it's the Five Eyes. And so there's, agencies and governments working together that have complete access through the internet. So everything is always introduced to the public as being, it makes your life easier. It gives you more access to things, smartphone, smart TV, smart toilet, smart. I mean, what do you need so much? What do you need a smart home for? It makes you more dependent upon your gadgets and your products. All along, everything is bugged and chipped in a sense to where if everyone have smart gadgets, then that's basically saying you don't need to think, because everything you have can do it for you, which is not a part of freedom and liberty and having the opportunity to choose and having free will as to what you want to share and what you don't want to share. So we're unfortunately being directed down a very narrow pathway, I believe, that, once we go down there, and as I mentioned in the video, once we go digital, ain't no going back. So
you're right.
I think we might not want to rush into a decentralized private type of nature, because once we get there,
One thing I do want to mention, that, this whole Byzantine fault tolerant issue, I think was a leap forward for us, though, in a way. And the reason is because now that concept can be and is being copied and implemented in various other applications, not just in Bitcoin, right? So all these different blockchains out here are really pushing forward decentralization in a very good way. You mentioned storage. There are many platforms out there, blockchains, that are doing this storage in a decentralized manner using IPFS, which is interplanetary file system. So when I upload to the IPFS, the files are being copied on. It's almost like BitTorrent, like that concept where if I upload a file, it's being replicated on nodes all over the internet. So we're getting toward that point, man. And I don't know. We'll get to a decentralized internet at some point, for sure.
I hope so. And it's one of the things where ultimately, and this is, just a part of, from a spiritual standpoint, my belief concepts of just knowing that where all this is heading, like, through faith, and, especially being a Christian, I kind of know how the story ends according to what I believe. So I'm thinking, like, if it's one world, one government, and one entity, one access to the commerce through a single source that you have to either acknowledge or defy. This is, so what better way to have that type of monetary base and system other than an internet system with the blockchain, the coins, the tokens, all pointing you down one pathway. And just mind you, from an educational standpoint, as you keep mentioning, the public they're not really educated enough to realize what's going on. They're more so moving with momentum and the fact that people are so distracted now with so many different things that they don't really care. And our kids, unfortunately, are not really getting taught the importance of just knowing your rights and knowing the benefits you have as a citizen. So they'll fall for anything. So it won't be hard to trick the next generation because they don't know the transition period is happening right now. So having an internet that's digital, decentralized and private and stuff like that sounds good in theory, but it's one of the things until I see it, I'm not that confident, man, that they're going to actually do something that'll benefit mankind as a whole without their.
Well, I know EOS is EOS storage, which I think will be able to really be implemented with EOS 2.0 coming out soon. EOS IO 2.0 is going to be, and they're just not EOS. There are other blockchain projects. I just follow EOS the most because I think that's a very good. What you want to call it, decentralized computer or operating system. You're going to see it, man. But my concern, Mike, is I'm looking 3 to 5 to 6 years out. Quantum computing, that takes it to a whole nother level. Yes, and that's a whole nother topic we could have a discussion about, because now with quantum computing, it's going to eliminate. So you think technology has eliminated jobs now? Wait till, and I don't know if you heard, Google just came out with their announcement that they've achieved quantum supremacy.
In the
54 bit qubits,
something qubits. Once they get 256 or whatever. I read up on that, and so it's one of the things where I believe that the jobs, employment in the next 10 years are going to be rebranded and reshifted to where I think, everyone's going to be forced to accept whatever the government proposes and hands out, as well as
that's dangerous.
We're going to become affiliatepreneurs, to where people will more than likely have to go out and actually produce for companies as opposed to go look for job security by sitting at a desk or cubicle. Getting benefits, healthcare, you see the pensions.
Well, we see that. Pension. I saw your documentary you put up about pensions.
That's
they were talking
stuff,
from 1970 something. I'm like, damn, they talking about stuff that's happening now. That's crazy.
I've been doing so much research on that stuff, man.
It's spooky, man. It is, but the trend is happening now. You talk about that, Mike. You see WeWork, that whole movement to co-working spaces, and it's happening. It is happening. It is happening.
It is, man.
So what do you think the solution is? I mean, so much on the internet we talk about, and I see so much content about the problem. This is the problem. That's the problem. This is that. You know, the whole Peter Schiff, he just tells you, complains left, right, this was wrong, but he never gives a solution.
Yeah.
What do we do here, man? Like, where do we go from here, or
Right.
are we doomed?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because it's one of the things where here's the biggest issue. We can't solve these level of problems with the same level of thinking, and that's
True.
You know, mankind, the evil side of mankind has really done itself in, because all of this is relatively the whole usury concept of excessive debt, enslaving people monetarily, depriving them of education, and just denying them the right to know their spiritual nature and self, removing Christianity or removing the Bible from school. I mean, all that stuff is designed. And so I believe personally, my personal opinion, and this is where I'm going with, my channel as well. We know the problems. Now the solutions are what? It's simple. At the end of the day, gold and silver are great practical things you can hold to preserve your financial wealth and give you a bit of a chance in the future. But yet we've never been to the future, so we don't know how that's going to play out. So you can't depend and base your life on being able to stack and hold it and then have a peace of mind that, no one's going to come take it from you.
Right.
And then with crypto, we've talked a lot about just the skeptical side of things, of how it's digital. You can't trust it because, once again, it's new. It's literally 10 years old, and we're already in too far ahead in the future talking about what's coming and not really appreciating what our greatest asset is. And I personally believe, and this is once again goes back to a spiritual nature. The Bible says in Proverbs 18:16 that a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men and women. And just the very concept that every single person has a gift, that is your asset. You are your asset. You are your biggest value creator. It doesn't matter what currency you're receiving it in. If you're of service to the world, utilizing your gift, you're going to be okay. And so
you bring up a great point. Yeah, money is just a medium of exchange for your talent.
Exactly. And if you are serving your gift, if you are doing, and once again, if you're doing what you were born to do, problem is people settle for doing what they're capable of doing, or they've been taught to do, and not what's in their heart, what's their gift. And so if you're doing your gift, it'll make room for you in a sense. And if you're of service to somebody, you will be compensated for your service. I mean, it's one thing to do pro bono work, do free work because you have a heart for people. But if you get really good at what you do, people will pay you and demand your time and service, which will come whatever currency you probably want around this planet. So getting back to the spiritual essence of things is what we need to do. That's the only solution we have, because we can't solve these problems with the level of thinking we have. So we need a higher power, I believe.
Excellent. Where can they find you, Mike?
Yeah, so Twitter, I'm at Rethinking, RETHINKIN dollar. Wasn't able to do the full rethinking, but Rethinking dollar. And then YouTube at Rethinking the Dollar there. And pretty much every social media platform I try to be on there. So just Rethinking the Dollar should connect you with me if you have interested in find out more about what I talk about.
Great, man. Thank you for coming on. If you guys haven't seen Mike and Rethinking the Dollar, then you've been under a YouTube rock. This guy's been doing this thing. Check his channel out for sure. Again, guys, thank you for checking in with this Kickin It Session with Mike from Rethinking the Dollar. He picked Jay-Z, Lost Ones today. We're going to rock out to that. We out of here, people. Holla!
You could look in the mirror like, there I am, and still not see